Good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday. And today is our Monday recap. Well, it was a pretty exciting weekend, considering that most of the members of the cabinet of the White House, the executive branch, were all in the same room, members of Congress. It was very, very crazy. My husband and I were talking about it, and he was like, they could have reset the government with just this one incident. Just found it very interesting that they were all in that same room at the same time. And let's remember, Donald Trump normally does not go to the DC dinner. He just doesn't go. Okay. He didn't go in his last administration. He did not go to one. Finally decides to go, and this pops off because he didn't go last year. Just saying. So I pulled one article from all sides. I'm not going to go right into it because I've got some videos that I want to share with you guys. But it says gunfire erupts White House correspondent dinner. Trump and cabinet escorted out safely. Now, apparently they continued with the dinner, right? The reason why I kind of wait on situations like this is because I want to see, like, okay, who's the gunman? What happened? Why did it happen? You know what I'm saying? I'm just kind of waiting for them to flesh it out. I don't just pounce on things because some things are just, you just got to wait. You just got to wait. So apparently the individual was from Torrance, California. He was a tutor, gamer, but it does show the propaganda in this country and how people can be radicalized in this country to do something like that. He flew from California to DC to do this, you guys. Now, what I'm finding very odd is how do you have members of the whole executive branch at a hotel and random people can just be there? He was a random person. He was not an attendee. Like, you're going to let attendees stay at the hotel, but everybody else, nobody should have been in that building, but people that were attending that event, period. So if it was press or, you know what I'm saying, different individuals like that, if you were attending the event, fine, you're at the hotel. If you're not attending this event, you shouldn't be here because you don't have any business being here, period. That's where, to me, that's where this all fell apart. But anyway, so there's a few videos that I wanted to show, and it's just basically a take on it. And her name is Amanda, and Amanda's Mild Takes. So I just wanted to check out just her perspective. Now, one is from the day after, I'm going to say the day after the shooting happened. And then this one, I think, is from yesterday, the other video.
This is weird. So there were apparently shots fired outside the ballroom of the Washington Hilton where the White House Correspondents' Dinner is happening. Trump is there for the first time in many, many years. So is Melania. So is most of the cabinet and a whole bunch of members of Congress. And of course, the White House press corps. So shots go off in the hallway outside of the ballroom. And the Secret Service took a full minute to get Trump off of the stage. There were reports going around that the shooter had been killed. And now they're saying that he's been apprehended. One person in custody. Okay. No security was required to enter the hotel? What? This is the same hotel where Ronald Reagan was almost assassinated. There's all this video of Kash Patel just standing outside on the sidewalk, like texting somebody. Apparently continuing the dinner. Like they're going to continue the dinner. Linda McMahon, who thinks AI is a steak sauce, is back in her chair. They are escorting members of the cabinet back into the ballroom. Y'all know I'm not a conspiracy person. I'm not. This is weird. I mean, this is just weird. We've not heard whether or not the shooter is alive or not. We've not actually even heard if there was a real gun. Like, why would they let people go back into the room? Why was there no security required to get into the hotel? This whole thing is fucking, no, fishy.
Okay, so that was her first video. Now I want to say this video was from yesterday.
I kind of don't care about this, and that is weird. My first thought was, I hope everyone's okay. And then when everyone was okay, it was, this is so annoying because I have to get up in the morning and go to the gym. Which is an insane thought to have, right, at a time like that. But it's just kind of whatever. Like, nobody was hurt. They should have had metal detectors at the doors. I'm sure they will do that moving forward. He'll build the ballroom or he won't. You know, like, I don't care. God. The guy's like a 30-year-old, 31-year-old gaming developer and tutor from California. Okay. Conservative influencers are already doing their usual, you know, the left is so full of political violence, ignoring Melissa Hortman, ignoring the guy who tried to set Governor Shapiro's house on fire, ignoring the guy who beat Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer. Influencers on the left are all pretty universally being like, sure, you know, which I don't know how I feel about that. The whole thing was very weird. Politicians on the right are talking about how political violence has no place here, despite the fact that they are creating an environment, probably on purpose, where political violence is a thing, and praising law enforcement, of course, despite the fact that this was probably a failure of law enforcement on multiple levels. And then we get the discourse about how bad it is that we're all desensitized to this sort of thing, as it ever was, you know? I've done videos before about how the people who try to assassinate presidents are almost universally just like very mentally ill. I think that this will probably be the same thing. I know a lot of people think that it was staged to like get his polling numbers up or whatever. I don't care. And that's the weird thing, you know, like even if the president is like staging an assassination attempt that he conveniently survives every single time to boost his public image, like this is like the third time. I don't care. You just at that point are like the boy who cried assassin. I have to go to the gym. I just, you know. Another thing that's weird about this is that we don't actually know why he stormed the Secret Service or like tried to get into that ballroom, if he even did. We don't even know that. Was he trying to hurt Trump, or was he trying to hurt any of the dozens of really, really hated, corrupt, weird drug addicts that were in that room? This is an administration that draws out kind of the worst and least well people to the national stage. And I guess all I have is a shrug, and I feel a little weird about that. And I guess that's all I'm trying to say.
And
I kind of don't care about that.
And that's the part, right? To me, it's gotten to the point where people are desensitized when things like this happen. It's like, oh, whatever. No, there's something wrong. But the more violence that we are subjected to, the more people that are subjected to the violence, the more people become desensitized and they do not care about human life. It's that part. And that goes for all adults, children, everyone. Why are we losing our humanity? And is it on purpose? Right? We still don't know what connections this individual has. All we know is he's from California and he flew to DC and they're saying he's a lone wolf. It doesn't pass the smell test on that one for me. But I am grateful that people were not hurt. Very interesting that they decided to continue on with the dinner. Now, I want to also share a video from 60 Minutes. Apparently, there was an interview with Donald Trump after the event. And let's check this out.
So-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this, I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, you know, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, you know, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and
these are
never,
the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview.
The other thing that he wrote in
disgraceful.
the other thing in the manifesto that I think is worth looking at in terms of determining his motive is he had been staying at the hotel since Friday. He checked in, he said he had cased the place, and he wrote, "What the hell is the Secret Service doing?" And he wrote this quote, "I expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got is nothing." He wrote, like, this level of incompetence is insane. Sir, you have already had two attempted...
Well, he was pretty incompetent, too, because he got caught. And he got caught pretty easily. So I'd say he was pretty incompetent, too. You know, I could take any event having to do with security or anything else. I can always find fault. Those guys did a good job last night. They did a really good job.
I mentioned that because, again, as his motive, and you brought this up, he had social media accounts that had anti-Trump and anti-Christian rhetoric.
You should read, why don't you read all the anti-Trump? Why don't you read it? You just did, so why don't you read it?
Well, he had a lot of anti-Christian rhetoric. He was part of a group called the Wide Awakes. He had attended a No Kings protest in California.
No Kings.
Yeah. So he was definitely an individual that was anti-Trump. But should that lead somebody to travel from California to DC to want to unalive people? It's that part right there. You know, and there was actually an article in Political where they kind of outlined how Trump lashes out at 60 Minutes anchor for reading alleged gunman's manifesto. And that's the video that I just played for you guys. And I'll definitely leave the link so that you can, you know, read the article that, you know, Political's take on it. You know, and you saw him lash out at Norah O'Donnell in the interview on Sunday for quoting from the manifesto of the suspected gunman who tried to storm the White House Correspondents' Dinner less than 24 hours earlier. Now, what I also find interesting is the fact that the gunman's like, yeah, the security's bad, this, that, and the other. You wouldn't know what the security is supposed to be because you're not a part of the team. They may have had all these things. What are you talking about? He's talking about, like, there's no bugs, there's this, there's no that. There's like, what are you, sir? Do you know somebody on the team? Right? You don't know what the security measures are. You're assuming these things. You're already out of your mind. And the other thing that's really bad is, why didn't anybody listen to the family? Because apparently the family stated their concerns about him and his level of being radicalized. And they were kind of in fear for him, of his life. You know, they don't want him to lose his life, you know, being this radicalized. And no one did anything. It's situations like this where I'm like, okay, FBI, why weren't you on top of this? But that takes me to something else. But I did a little research in Grok. We won't go through the whole thing for sake of time. But, you know, the key events, it happened around 8:36 that the gunshot rang out. The suspect is Cole Thomas Allen. He's 31 from Torrance, California. He was a guest at the hotel. Why is a guest at the hotel when you're having this event? And that's something going forward, it shouldn't be. If people are not a part of the event happening at the hotel should be completely cleared of anybody. So you never have an incident like this. That's a freebie, FBI. That's just a freebie. Okay? Shouldn't have been in there. Nobody should have been in there. And it says there were reports that the Secret Service was not in position. Yes, there have been reports and discussions highlighting potential security shortcomings at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner incident on April 25th, 2026, including questions about Secret Service positioning, screening, and overall setup. And that's what this gentleman was complaining about. And I'm like, okay, he's complaining about it. Other people are complaining about it. I'm like, Trump's not complaining about it. He said that, you know, for him, they were doing their job, right? So no major non-in-position failures reported in official statement. Secret Service Director Sean Curran and others credited multi-layered protection and said agents performed admirably. The agent who was shot at the checkpoint and protected by body armor, Trump and law enforcement have generally lauded the response. So, Trump emphasized, as you heard, the dangers of the job while pushing for the dinner to continue, reschedule, and praising law enforcement. Critics and analysts are using the breach to question whether positioning, hotel access controls, or resources constraints left vulnerabilities, especially given the high profile attendees. You know what? Here's the thing. People are evil, and evil is evil. And the bad part is people are going to do this irregardless. But it definitely goes back to the rhetoric on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. They both do this to the point where people are so on edge and they're pushed to the point where, like, okay, if you're not going to fix it, I'm going to take it into my own hands and fix it. It is what it is. And it is very sad, and it shouldn't be, but that's what's happening. Now, I also wanted to look at and give an update to this. We are still in a partial government shutdown. Okay, I don't think because with everything else going on, nobody's paying attention to this. So yes, there is an ongoing U.S. partial shutdown. It's been going on for 72 days now. It's been going on since February 14th, and it's not being fixed. Like, what's going on? What is going on, Congress? Fix this. I don't care how you fix it, fix it. And I don't want things like a kill switch being put into the Appropriations Act. That's not a slight towards 𝗧𝗛𝗏, but we'll go over that later. But apparently, they still can't get this done. So it stems from a partisan impasse over funding and reforms for Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE and CBP inside DHS. Again, those two divisions, CBP and ICE, they're already funded. They're mad because they're like, we don't want them to wear a mask and we want them to have body cameras. You want them to have both of those things. Update the legislation on it. Stop trying to mess with the appropriations bill with it. It's one of those things that's like, I understand what they're trying to do, just this back and forth and push, but you're doing it at the expense of the American people. And now you've got vulnerabilities everywhere. In my opinion, were there vulnerabilities with that shooting that happened because of what this is? Because this is going on, this partial shutdown. And I'll give you guys the link, but in short, Homeland Security functions have faced real strains, right? Morale issues for unpaid and intermittently paid staff, reduced non-essential work, and ripple effects on readiness. But critical life, property protection, and national defense have not been shut down outright. Officials from DHS and the Secret Service have publicly warned of longer-term risk if this drags on, because this can't be indefinite. Again, Congress, if you do not like how ICE is functioning, you have to handle it with legislation because that's how it was created. It's not just this willy-nilly, oh, we're going to hold your money until you do what we want. It doesn't work that way because they're still paid. But everybody else under them isn't. TSA workers are not paid. Are we trying to push it so where TSA is going to be, outsourced privately? Right? And it'll just be a private security situation? Yeah. Is that going to happen? Is that going to happen? And, we have to look at that. We have to ask those questions. Now, the next topic I want to get into is my trending topic on X. And this one is from Tiffany Santhi. And she says, Sarah Harris left $1 million corporate job for 4 months in government, wrote the U.S. Supreme Court position, then walked right back out and is now arguing for Bayer Monsanto, and you're paying the bill. You paid her salary. They got her loyalty. The U.S. is a corporatocracy. So basically a corporatocracy, right? Wow. So I can't see all the definition of a corporatocracy behind her, but I would like to look it up. I won't do it right now, but I'm always curious. But let's check out this video.
We're all taught in school to believe that we live in a republic, a representative republic where we elect officials and they represent our interests, and that's the way the U.S. government works. But what if I told you that tomorrow I'm going to be at the Supreme Court where our government is proving in real time for all of us that we actually live in a corporatocracy? That's right. Tomorrow at the Supreme Court, we're all going to get to see how we've become a society or system that is governed or controlled by corporations. Now, if you were to look up corporatocracy in a written dictionary and it had a photograph, it would look exactly like this. That's right. Corporatocracy's name, at least tomorrow, is Sarah M. Harris. Sarah M. Harris. See, she's going to be arguing on behalf of Bayer Monsanto at the Supreme Court. The problem is she's not being paid by Bayer Monsanto to argue on behalf of Bayer Monsanto tomorrow. No, she's being paid by you. And you're probably wondering, well, how am I paying Sarah Harris to argue on behalf of Bayer Monsanto tomorrow morning? And that is the $2.1 million a year question that I'm going to give you the answer to right now. You see, a few years ago, Sarah got the dream job. She became a clerk for Justice Clarence Thomas, who once upon a time was the attorney for Bayer Monsanto. Just after clerking, she got a job as an assistant attorney general in the Department of Justice in their legal counsel division. But it was a short stint, and right after that, she got offered the big white shoe law firm job at Williams and Connolly on their appellate and Supreme Court trial division. It's not particularly common for somebody to leave their first U.S. government job and get an offer to be a partner, an equity holding partner at one of the top appellate law firms in the United States. But it sure was for Sarah. Fun fact, partners at Williams and Connolly average between $1.2 million and $5 million a year in bonuses, incentives, and regular pay. And that's exactly where Sarah stayed from 2019 all the way until January of 2025. And while she was there, one of her biggest clients was, of course, Bayer Monsanto. And she had the good fortune of working on this very case that we're going to see at the Supreme Court tomorrow morning. And you're probably wondering, well, if she was only there until 2025, where did she go? Well, she gave up her cushy $1.2 to $5 million a year salary and bonuses to go become a civil servant and do her civic duty working for the Trump administration. And not for a long time, just for 4 short months, just long enough to write the amicus brief that the Trump administration would later submit in the same case she'd been working on at Williams and Connolly. You're probably wondering how much money she got paid for that civic duty, right? Well, it was a 90% pay cut. She went down to a cap of $195 a year for that 4-month period. Don't worry, I'm sure it's a coincidence. It probably had nothing to do with the fact that she'd been working on behalf of Bayer Monsanto, paid huge money by Bayer Monsanto, and that she happened to come into the government exactly at the moment that they needed a brief written in support of that exact same case that would give Bayer Monsanto, a German company worth hundreds of billions of dollars, immunity so that they no longer had to pay out tens of billions of dollars to the American farmers and children that they keep killing with their pesticides and their herbicides. That was a coincidence, everybody. Now, I bet you're wondering what happened to Sarah when she left her job as the Solicitor General and went to her next position 4 short months later. Did she have to go find a new firm? Did she need to go to interviews like you? Did she go on LinkedIn and look around? No. She went right back to Williams and Connolly, where they welcomed her with open arms and very likely a large re-entry bonus to make up for all that money she lost. I mean, it wasn't for that. It was literally just a rehiring bonus, I'm sure. She went back to Williams and Connolly, where she got to go back to representing Bayer Monsanto as her client. And since then, she's just been plugging along, doing her work over there, getting ready for the big Supreme Court case. And you would think, given she works at Williams and Connolly, and given that she no longer works for the U.S. government, that at the Supreme Court tomorrow, she'd be being paid by Bayer Monsanto. Nay, that is not what she's doing. No, because the U.S. government has now asked her to come and make our arguments at the Supreme Court tomorrow. We're not litigants. We're not a named party. But Bayer Monsanto has graciously given the U.S. government deference and said, you know what? We have paid for a lot of lawyers for the last several years to argue this case, but we don't need our argument time. You want to pay a lawyer to argue? we're fine with that. You can use taxpayer money to pay any lawyer of your choosing, and you can argue your amicus brief instead of our arguments. We don't need to make ours. And we will give you our time at the Supreme Court. And naturally, out of all the hundreds of thousands of lawyers that they had at their disposal, they chose Sarah Harris, 𝗵𝗵𝗡𝗄's lawyer at Williams and Connolly.
Now, it's a 9-minute video. I'm not going to play the entire video, but I will have the link so you guys can listen to that. You know, there's a word that they teach us as paralegals. It's called conflict, right? And they have us do conflict searches so that if there's a conflict of interest, then people are removed from certain cases. If that is like the most incestuous conflict of interest I've ever heard in my entire being. How are you the same attorney working for the very entity that the United States government is going against, right? Because they are killing people with their products. We're supposed to be standing against them. And you're the very attorney that they hire to represent the United States when that was your former client. That's a conflict of interest if there isn't one. But it just shows the lack of fiduciary duty in this country. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit back or are you going to run for office, right? Are you going to do your part to make sure that this stops? Because this is absolutely insane. And before we go, I just want to remind you guys to definitely check out 𝗵𝗟𝗡𝗢𝗓𝑉�sionnews.com. We've got merch and we've got Divine Echo Collective, the album that I produced last year. So definitely check us out. You got UVN merch, you got faith, faith merch. So definitely check it out. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We will see you in the next one.